This video I'm going to cover traditional lighting and tuning that lighting using Hardware 2.0 as the renderer. So we'll go ahead and turn on Viewport 2.0. And the nice thing about using this is we're planning on rendering with Hardware 2.0 using this approach. So what we see is what we're going to get. So what we'll be able to do is just up our quality settings of the renderer when we actually output if we can't handle it in real time, which in my case it looks like I'm having a little bit of performance trouble. So I'm going to make sure motion blur's turned off. I'm going to leave ambient occlusion on for now. And anti-aliasing also can be a big hit, so that's off for now. But when we actually render, we'll go ahead and kick that on. Okay, so first thing I need to do is select this so I can add this material, but I can't because this background element from the using geometry to add texture elements is in the way. And I should have mentioned this in that video, but I neglected to, so I'll go ahead and mention it now. Just go ahead and set this up on its own layer and reference that layer. So I'll use this button to create a new layer and assign the selected, and I'll call that BG layer, give that a reference, and then move it down. It doesn't really need to be moved down, but it is in the back. So, all right, so now I can't accidentally select that, and I can easily select my ground object. So I'll select my ground object, and I need to apply this snow material. And if I've named things properly, I'm not sure we'll actually be able to get all of this into the video. Yeah, it looks like we can. Then I'll have a snow material. So I'll go ahead and switch that over to snow material. And that just gives me a good starting place because these two things now are going to basically look the same. They're supposed to be made of the same material, so this is going to be the way to start that. So I'm ready to go ahead and start adding in some lights. So I'll go ahead and do create lights, and in this case I'll just start with directional lights. So directional lights are an interesting light source. They're really pretty easy to use. It doesn't matter where they are in your scene, it only matters how they're oriented. So as I start to move this, we should see a change, but we don't. There's another flag that has to be set over here that tells Maya to use the lights that you put in the scene and not just its own default lights. So I'll set that, and now when I rotate this, you can see where that light is aiming. So I'll start with this one. This is going to be our key light. So I'll look to the background to reference this and get a sense of where the light should be coming from. So it's coming from this side pretty hard. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this on around here. It's pretty good side light, but also keep it aiming down here a little bit too. I don't want it to come directly from the side. It's coming from above as well. So this way I fill in the ground and I get the light sort of in the right direction here. So I don't want it to be completely from the side, but favoring this side pretty heavily. Okay, I'll go ahead and name this key light. And I want to pick the color of this light probably from something back here. This is all supposed to be of the same material, so I can pull that color directly. So I'll just Control A, bring up my attribute editor, select the light color, and then sample it back here. And you can see it goes to this amber color. But what we're getting here doesn't look like that amber color at all. It looks like a real muddy sort of color. So that's something we're going to need to change in our shader itself. So when I set this shader up, I set it up sort of to favor blue just because that sort of looked good as I was doing the model. But at this point it's sort of just getting in the way. The blue of this snow will actually be influence of the light, not of the material itself. So I don't want to confuse that too much. Just set this back to white, and now we should have a much more amber look over here. It's still way too dark, but it's a start. So I'll go ahead and create a new light here, and I'm just going to keep adding lights before tuning this one all the way, because I have a lighting system that I'm adding here. So I'm going to add a key light, a fill light, and a rim light. So I'll go ahead and move this again over here just because it's easy to see. And this one's going to be coming in from the other direction and also aiming down. So there you can see that we're starting to get a lot of additional brightness over here, We're actually a little over bright. He's certainly over bright. I think that we're going to need to do a little shader tuning to really get that toned out to where we want. But I'm going to take the intensity of this down, this being our fill light. It will have a lower intensity than our key light. So maybe something like a 0.7 would be good. And that actually worked pretty well. We're getting pretty close. So this key light is the one that has a color shift, and because it's color shifted down, its intensity is actually a little lower because basically we're taking some of that intensity out by adding color. So it's not really adding color, it's subtracting intensity from these colors. So this light might either need to go down a little bit, or this one could actually be pushed up just a little bit higher, something like this. And it feels like we're actually getting pretty close in terms of brightness with the background. And the color balance looks pretty good. This one's been color shifted to the actual background, and this one's still straight white. I could shift this one to blue. It'll probably just muddy us up. And I'm going to need to add in some other lights here, so I'm just going to see what they contribute to the scene as well. So I'll go ahead and add another light here. I'll just create light, and again, once again, use a directional, pull that over to us. I'm just going to use snap, just hold V and snap down just to get it over here where I can play with it. And then this is going to be our rim light, so I'm just going to eke that around to the side where it's just catching that edge. It just has just a little bit of extra influence to help pop him out when he's landed down here. Probably look pretty good. So that looks fine. I'll just leave that like that. I'll leave that at full intensity for now. I might need to go back and tune that down a little bit later. But what else do we see here? The blue shadow happening back here does not match our blacks that we're getting in here at all. Like this is really dark black shadowing in here, and underneath here just looks really bad. So I actually want that to shift out to blue. So I'm going to add a new light to do that. First I'm going to name this guy our rim light. And I'll just go ahead and duplicate the rim light and move it down here just so I can keep it separated. Okay, this light is going to be aimed basically straight up. Maybe a little bit in from the side, but it's basically going to be going straight up. So let me just zero these out, and just this way I can get a cleaner transform on this. So, and then we'll just eke it in a little bit from the side here. Something like that will probably be pretty good. And then for this color, I'll just pick up the color of the background here, the shadow area. So I'll select the color, get my picker, and then find a dark part of that and sample that. And already that makes a big difference. You can actually see, let's get rid of that again, that shadow color actually fills in and helps match this really well. So that's fine. I'm just going to leave it just like that. I'm going to leave the intensity at full 1 because I feel like overriding that black is really important. And this will still get dark inside here because the ambient occlusion is still on, and that'll still darken that up for us. So let's take a look at this in a couple different views. So we have two different angles. Looking pretty good. A little too bright. Very, very bright here on the chest and on this peak here. But color-wise, it feels like a pretty decent match. So we need to add shadows, and we need to tune up the shaders just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the shader. So I can do that by selecting the ground and then bringing up my attribute editor. And I hate it that thing's docked, so I'll just get it out of there. And then I'll just push down here till I get to my snow material. And the snow material, let me go ahead and deselect here. I'm going to need to make that selection, I guess, directly in the hypershade just so I can maintain it. So let me go ahead and grab my hypershade here, select my snow material. This way I don't have anything selected in the scene, and I can still do my tuning. So I'm just going to try to get this out of the way without docking it accidentally. And I'm going to pull down to the shaders, the specular shading section here, and I'll just drop down my specular color. This thing's already pretty good. It's like it's somewhat rough. It's not going to be a bright spot right now. I could diffuse that out some more, but for now I'm just going to try to bring down my specular color and see what that does. So sort of in real time I get an update of what's happening here. It definitely looks better. It's still just maybe a little bit too strong. Not too bad. You can look back here and start to see a little bit of that color coming in. So it's really not too bad. I'll maybe just drop it down just a hair more. Okay, and the rest of that will be taken care of with light tuning probably. We'll just have to turn this light down just a little bit. So what's left now is getting our shadows to match up. And the shadows are going to give us a little bit of a problem on this. So I'll go ahead and turn those on and show you what we run into. So also shadow color. Let me go ahead and just sample this shadow color as well. We know we want our shadows to be dark blue from over here. So I'm actually just going to darken it a little bit more artificially. And okay, we're going to turn on depth map shadows. That's actually the one that's going to work with hardware. You can't ray trace in the hardware, so just turn on depth map shadows. We don't see anything happen at all. There's another flag that has to be set. It's under lighting, and you have to tell it specifically use shadows. So I'll turn that on, and immediately everything is cast in shadow. So here you can see everything's out of shadow, and now everything's in shadow. What's happening here is the world that I built, this cylinder that's holding our background image, is actually shadowing. It's unfortunate because there's actually a flag that you can set to there we go. There's a flag that you can set to tell it not to do that. So I'll pull up the attribute editor, and you can see right here in render stats, don't cast shadows and don't receive shadows. But I think hardware 2.0 is just sort of ignoring that, which makes sense, I guess. It has to optimize what it looks at, so that's fine. That just means we need to do something else. Our options are cut this end of the cylinder off, in which case we'd probably have a little bit of problem with a gap happening up here in the one shot that's wider. Let me just get over there. Or alternatively, turn this key light into a spotlight, and that's going to be the easier solution in this case. So instead of trying to cut off this sky element, let me just go ahead and just select this again. So we would definitely have a hole here, and I'm not sure if we cut it off over here, we would probably still have shadows cast on this guy, depending on this angle. But at any rate, it's probably just going to be easier to shift this guy into a spotlight. So you don't have to create a spotlight and redo all the color work and everything like that. You can just grab the light and convert it. So I'll just go into my attribute editor, and up at the top, instead of being a directional light, I'll just make it a spotlight. And now the spotlight, I can become sort of the spotlight. I can look through it. Now you can actually do this with anything, but it's really convenient with spotlights. So I can choose the spotlight and choose look through selected, and this allows me just to see what the spotlight sees, which is pretty convenient. And by default, it looks like our clipping plane is too small, so let me just go ahead and change that. We're not going to be near anything, so I'll go ahead and make this 10,000. That way I can see everything. And I'll just zoom out here, and I want this to evenly light this whole area. So I'll just put it around here, and then I'll change up my cone angle. What I need to make sure of is that I stay within the borders of this cylinder. So I'll just up my cone angle a little bit, something like this, and then I'll add a little bit to soften that out. So this is just an extra thing where the light falls off from here to here. So that helps soften that, and let me just get back down into my shot. So now I can see a shadow being cast. The shadow sort of doesn't feel like quite the right color right now. The direction of it feels pretty good. The color of it doesn't feel too good, and it's very, very blocky right now. So I'll need to do a little bit of work on that as well. I'm okay with the overall brightness and color match between these two things. It feels pretty good to me. So I'll come back here. I'll take a look at this shadow, and I'll just pop up my attribute editor for this and take a look at my shadow color here. So I think as it started, it was actually quite a lot bluer, and I shifted it down, which was, I think, a mistake here. That's feeling better. It feels like more blue in there. So I'm going to leave it just like that. And it's really artificially dark back here, as well as around some of these places. So I feel like I need to go make a little bit of tuning happen in my ambient occlusion. It's just too strong an effect right now. It's just darkening down way too much. I do like it. I like that ambient occlusion is helping out in those areas. And I'll just turn it on and off to give you a sense of what it's doing. So there's with it on, and there's with it off. So you can see how much darkness that's adding in there. And this looks kind of goofy. He's like glowing blue, and this is glowing blue back here. So it definitely helps to have the ambient occlusion on, but it's just heavy, and that's because my amount has been pushed way up. So maybe with an amount of 1, that'll feel a little bit better. So maybe something like this. Whatever makes it feel like the right balance. That's feeling better. Okay, so that's actually looking pretty good. That shadow looks pretty good, besides the fact that it's really, really choppy looking. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to tune that. Again, it's in the attribute editor, my docked attribute editor, and it is down here in the depth map shadow attributes. You need to change the filter size. I'll try to get this out of the way, but you won't be able to see what I'm doing. So we'll just take a look here at this shadow. And we'll just push this filter size up, and as it goes up, this should soften, which it did, but it introduced a lot of extra junk over here as well. So this may be a product of not enough resolution. I'm not entirely sure. Try setting our bias up a little bit. Definitely helps, but I have to push it so far that it sort of falls away over here. So I'm going to try to push up my resolution, and I'll stay with a power of 2 and just go up to 1024, and that definitely helped. You can actually see more definition in the shadow, and a lot of this junk sort of has disappeared. So again, I'll just push this up slightly to get rid of that that artifacting that's happening. That's looking pretty good, and I might even consider filtering a little heavier to smooth that out yet further. I don't care that much about having a lot of definition. I just want it to be a nice soft shadow that follows him. So that looks pretty good. So I think at this point we would be ready to do a little bit more shader tuning, roughen up this this ground, and then set up for render. So I'm going to leave it like this for the lighting pass. I feel like that's a pretty good match, and I'll get into a little bit of texture tuning and then the actual render settings in part 2 of this.